we're in the right place here?
Centered in the frame.
Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. Everybody here and watching us online somewhere, probably in the bathroom. I had to throw that in there. To my right, we have Dennis and Karen Houghton, some of the owners of Houghton Horns. I guess the owners. Yeah. Name holder. Yeah. Along with Derek Wright, Mark Houghton. Is that it? Okay. I don't know why I was thinking there was more people. Anywho, we're going to give a little meet and greet about a side-by-side of some Kruspe style horns versus some Geyer style, mostly the Varus 5. Do you have the Varus 5, Karen? So the Varus 5 is modeled after an Alexander 200. We don't need to go in the deets on that, but it's wound up a little bit differently. So we're also going to give some little tips and tricks for some band directors and for some home musicians. So enjoy.
Yeah, I'm going to go get the lubricants that I was going to talk about. And Josh is going to have the...
We forgot something, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Yeah, how many people can you sit on stage if you were in horn player? Or you can't on stage?
We haven't. The question was, how many horn players can fit on the stage? We haven't tried yet. We don't know.
So you put the can on the corner so you don't have to just move it too far.
Yeah.
And then put all the horns in front.
That would hold well.
Yeah, three rows. Oh, I think it's
Four, maybe even five.
Maybe at some point in the future, we might start a horn club at Houghton Horns.
Yeah,
At least 15.
maybe a once a month thing?
Please bear with us. This is all new.
I think I'm starting by talking about valve servicing. And this is a thing, whether you're in a middle school band hall or a professional on stage. All of our instruments, the horns are going to be rotary valve, and that means that they have a top spindle under the valve cap, and then a bottom spindle at where the string attaches to the stop arm. And I was noticing, we were rehearsing earlier, played this little piece, and Josh, the horn that he picked up, has pretty noisy valves. So I thought it'd be a good example to use. In the repair shop, I like to use, and what we recommend, is 2 grades of oil, thin oil, like piston oil, inside the rotors, that's down the slides, and I'll demonstrate that, but also a heavier oil under the valve caps. And then the valve caps protect the bearing. And the bearing is what provides the guide for the valve to spin and actually bears the weight of the rotor as it's in playing position. So I'm going to take a couple caps off. And this is also a pre-owned horn. It's a Holton 378, which is the medium bell Kruspe model. We'll also talk about those wraps and how they're the differences between a Kruspe and a Geyer wrap. But first I'm going to get a drop of oil under the valve cap. And in my opinion, it's not as important to oil under the valve caps because maybe half as often as you do under the spindle, the bottom bearing. And there's no way the camera is going to pick this up, but under the valve string, where that little crack is where the rotor spins. That's the spindle bearing, and they tend to dry out. That oil does nothing to keep it from evaporating. And I recommend oiling there once or twice a week. And I'm putting 1 drop on each of these guys. and they were noisy before. And again, this is a pre-owned horn. It's probably 8 or 10 years old, so it's likely to have a little bit of wear. The oil, a thicker oil, will take the place of the extra play, and it'll provide some cushion. And I'm doing another trick. Learned this actually from a tuba player years ago. Played a rotary valve tuba. Once the oil's in place, you can use vacuum or suction by pulling the slide, and that will pull a negative pressure on the air outside the horn, pulling it into the valve and spreading the oil around. So many of us grew up with bend wrenches that would freak out if you, yeah, he's laughing because you're going to ruin your horn, you're going to destroy your valves. Sorry, it's air molecules, dude. So what I'm doing is pulling in negative pressure on the valves, suck in the oil. First is better. I didn't actually do it very much on second or third. And also, if someone wanted to buy this horn, was serious about it, I'd probably take it in the repair shop and do a few extra adjustments, get the valves quieter. But for school instruments, even marching instruments, you're not going to have many rotary valves. But we've seen kids, and Ms. Houghton taught at a local high school for many, many years. The kids would be out on the marching field with their euphony or their marching berries or mellows, and they'd pull the piston out and spit on it to get some lubrication because nobody had a bottle of oil. What I'm going to say from a repair standpoint is some lubrication is still better than nothing. So, but spit is not ideal. But yeah, so we sell this stuff that's pretty good at lubricating valves. On the bottom bearing and top bearing under the valve cap, I put, this is the JM bearing in linkage 13.5. It's a bit thicker than the normal 13, which we recommend for a new instrument. But then the other thing I didn't do was show you how I put oil down the slides. And I recommend doing this probably once or twice a week on your French horns and rotary tubas. I've pulled the 3 F slides, and I'm just going to insert a couple of drops of, this is the thinner oil to keep the valves moving freely. That lubricates the walls of the rotor. We'll also, for the live stream, we'll probably put up a graphic that we have, printed version or online, to show how we like to do that. And by the way, if for directors and music administrators, we would be happy to come out to your campus or to your in-service meeting and do a presentation on how we like to lubricate the valves, how general brass maintenance, and specifically, I've been doing brass repair for 40 years, how to get the best life and prolong the life of your brass inventory. So I've put a couple of drops down the slides. I'm also using the vacuum and using pressure by pushing the slide in and not pressing the lever down. And for those old school directors that this is a huge problem, it can be a problem if there's a bunch of buildup, there's debris in there because the horns haven't been cleaned in ages. Yes, that could make your valve stick. In general, from a repair standpoint though, I really feel like, again, some lubrication, whether it's saliva or valve oil or olive oil, for God's sake, is better than not having any lubrication on your horn. The other thing lubrication does for the instrument is it prevents mineral buildup. So we're blowing in saliva and food particles. Those tend to dry out. They get caked on the inside walls of the tubing, but also especially in the moving parts, the rotors and bearings. But a thin coating of oil, I know that that Phil Farkas used to recommend putting a couple drops of the thin oil down your mouth pipe once or twice a week. And that's going to spread inside the walls of the horn and, again, keep out the debris, keep the gunk from sticking. And then there's a third factor is the lime buildup or calcium deposits. Some of that is from the carbon dioxide we're pushing through the horn, and it deposits inside the walls. When it dries out, calcium carbonate is limestone, it's cement. And then horns have been played all semester or for a couple of years and not serviced. They're going to build pretty good deposition of lime deposits. If it dries out over a couple of weeks or over the summer, that's when you get the sticky valves. And we can make recommendations. We've serviced local high schools and band programs for 40 years. Love to talk to you about that or do an in-service for your directors. I think this horn's better, Josh. I haven't done a lot of the vacuum suction, but between the oil on the bottom bearings and you can also pull in the second rank, the high horn tubing, and you can hear it pop a little bit. And then, just for luck, because I'm a neurotic horn player, I had to spin it. But those are better. They're quieter. Tell me what you think.
That's a heck of a lot better. Yeah.
A few drops of oil in the right place can make a big difference. What else was I supposed to talk about, Ms. Houghton?
The horn stringing, that we have a horn stringing tutorial on houghtonhorns.com. I mean, it would be pointless to try and show everybody how to do it now with the camera way over there, but we do have a really great video online and other resources as well, so we kind of want to spread the word on that. All right, then Josh is going to talk a little bit about water removal.
Yeah. So we all know horn players are part-time plumbers, but we have to know how to get the water out. You have to follow gravity. For years, I taught spin it to the left. I was just informed that's not necessarily the case, and that's okay as well. As I was getting water out, I promise. But I was informed with a Kruspe style horn, meaning the fourth rotor, the change valve, is up here near your thumb at the top, and you have a main tuning slide that goes up and an F tuning slide that goes down. Just turn it over to the right. You can take out the main tuning slide, and if this slide comes out, take this one out, this extra oil slide. It's not a tuning slide. Some people would find that out either online or through other horn players.
Yeah, on the Con AT they call it, that's a water slide.
Yeah.
That's the actual name that the factory uses.
And that's an easy way to get oil onto your rotor, your change valve rotor.
Or a drink if you're thirsty.
So just always go to the right, turn it to the right, and eventually some of it will come out the bell, and that's okay as well. If you have a Veris 5 horn, Ms. Houghton, can I see your horn? If you have a Veris 5 horn, it's got a nice little Art Deco little 5s right there on the rotors. It's wound up a little bit differently than what you normally typically see. A lot of my students over the years have learned you just take out the big boy and the little guy, you turn it to the right. You can also turn it to the left and a little might come out, but just that is the easiest way to get water out of these slides. And from there on, you also have to get water out of the individual slides.
As Josh was saying, there are a couple of different designs of Geyer model horns and even some Kruspes. Sometimes there's a reverse loop in the tubing and the water will get stuck there. And I turned it to the right. Gosh, I turned it like 3-4 times. It's still stuck in there. You just turn it back to the left, and that will let the water release from the other loop. Again, it depends on how the spaghetti's wound up. And if you have a loop that's built backwards, that's going to trap some water sometimes. It's not rocket science. It's just
It's gravity.
gravity. But yeah, this one had you can see the water streaming out the belt, so we love to see that because it means your kids are filling up the horn with air.
Yes, I was.
What next?
Oh, it's still me, so sorry. So sometimes we'll have a slide that needs to be expanded a little bit, or we'll have a slide that just keeps falling out of the horn rather than go to the repair shop. And please take this with a huge grain of salt. You can use a trombone mouthpiece, a small bore, and just kind of tap it in the end to expand it, just ever so slightly. I mean, you can overdo it, so be very careful. Are you looking for a mouthpiece, Dennis?
Yeah, but I don't want to give you a $200 trombone.
Yeah, that would be good. We don't necessarily need to demonstrate that. I think people can use their imaginations. So just expand one or both of those slides ever so slightly. You can just kind of tap it in there, twist it a little bit. Let's see. From there, when the slides are fitting too tight, what you can do, and I'm not a repairman by any stretch, but I've seen this done fairly often. You can kind of like just push the legs together ever so slightly. With a huge grain of salt, again.
That's the thing. Even in the factories, and I've visited several factories, the alignment of the legs is so important. And usually it's the final assembly stage. They've got technicians there tweaking those alignments. And it's not just the inner legs. The alignment problem could be, we both got it. It could be the outer legs weren't built correctly, or they've been damaged by a kid being in a hurry, or maybe something fell on the horn. So there's four tubes that have to be in perfect alignment, inner and outer on both sides, and that creates a lot of problems.
Also, if it is in alignment and it's still fitting a little bit too tight, you can use the finest grade steel wool, which is what?
4/0.
4/0.
4 zeros.
4 zeros. But it's just 4 4 4 4?
4 zeros in a row.
4 0. Oh, 4 zeros in a row. Okay. So the lightest you can find, and slightly sand it down. Does
And if that doesn't do it, call me and I'll use sandpaper. Sorry, it's called emery cloth.
Yeah.
And we use it very carefully.
Okay, can I have the mic?
Yes, of course.
You guys can shout, I'm gonna use the mic.
Okay, so Janet and I, my colleague Janet and I, we have given lots of clinics, and one of our clinics was titled Helpful Horn Hacks. So some of these things that Josh talked about and that I'm going to talk about are just kind of little hacks that band directors can use in a pinch. I guess like the saliva thing, which was gross, but yeah, that's a hack. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the bell ring. Those of you that have detachable bells, sometimes if you try and get the bell, take the bell ring off, it's like really squeaky and almost like nails on a chalkboard. It's like, oh my gosh. So what?
We have 3 fixed bell horns up here, and no cut.
Well, if you get that horrible sound when you're putting the bell on and taking it off, if you just put some heavy oil along those threads, that really helps. It will silence it. Another thing that you can do in a pinch is use graphite, like a pencil. Just take a pencil, ordinary pencil, and color around on the threads, and that will make it softer too. Don't do both at the same time, but one or the other. Okay, the next hack. Oh.
Did I just get this for no reason?
Well, we're moving on, Josh. Okay. All right. So another hack is everybody knows, kids that wear braces, they have those tiny little rubber bands at one point. You can actually use those and put them on a slide if it's loose to kind of hold the slide in place. Now, if you're a professional player, you can get our slide locks. But if you're teaching band and you have a kid whose slide keeps falling out, Or if you want to mark a tuning place, on the horn, you can just slide one of those little tiny rubber bands on. So that's a hack. The next hack is if you have a stuck valve cap, you can use a dowel, or Janet said a Jenga block works too. So you can use that and just lightly tap on the valve cap with a rubber mallet, and the operative word here is lightly. You have to be very careful, but that will help loosen that, and a stuck slide as well. Also, something that I've done before is if I'm trying to pull a slide out that's resistant, I'll wrap a sock around the slide and then pull it out that way, so that as you're pulling, it's not going to hit the bell and dent it. Okay? All right, so for the final hack, you can actually, in a pinch, use a pencil eraser for a bumper on your horn if it falls out, like right before the concert. Just grab a pencil and cut a little tiny piece of the eraser off and stick it in the little place there. Another Janet thing, she has informed me that you can also use a spit wad for that same purpose. So apparently that she speaks from experience. So anyway, either one of those things will help, because you obviously, if you lose a bumper, you can't play. I mean, it's not going to work. So anyway, those are my little hacks. And I guess I'm going to give it back to Dennis here.
Spit wads, really. No, but in a pinch, and if the downbeat's coming, you don't have time to mess around. Get something in there to get to quiet the action, but also the bumpers are there on your horn to align the rotor in the optimum alignment. So if it's missing a bumper completely, the valve's going to be turning too far. You're likely to have response issues, or actually you could miss notes. If the bumper on the other hand is too big, then the valve is not opening all the way and the ports are not aligning. Same thing. You might have like a mushy response or mushy sound. Getting those 90-degree marks, and those marks under the valve caps, I've always called them alignment marks, but they're also called, dang it, I forgot the name. Witness marks. And I taught Josh that, and then I forgot. So many things I could talk about on adjusting a horn and aligning valves and so forth, but I think we were going to talk about acoustical differences between the wraps. It's funny because the Geyer model horns, Carl Geyer was a German, but his entire career was in Chicago. But those have taken over the popularity here, at least professionally, in major orchestras around the country, over the Kruspe wrap, which is also a German design. So this is the venerable Con 8D, a Kruspe design horn. The Kruspe design was originally brass horns. Anton Horner in the early 1900s started playing a nickel-silver version in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and that's the sound that became the American horn sound. It was in the late 30s that Con started developing their own version of a Kruspe horn, and this is a Con 8D. And there were actually reports of some of the great notable players from the 30s and 40s, 50s, and then as they took over in the LA studios, the Hollywood recordings were the Con 8Ds, but they had switched over from some of the German designs. Some early recording artists in Los Angeles played Alexander horns and other mix match of other makes, but by the 60s, the Con 8D was the standard, and that's what you hear on most movie music anytime from the 60s all the way through the early 2000s. The iconic sound of the 8D was partly because they recorded it with the mic 18 inches from the bell, behind the player. Most major recording studios now use a mix of techniques, and with Geyer monohorns, because of the way they project, they don't need to do that behind the player. They have the mic in front of the player. So a quick word on the differences in design. The AD has a rather narrow first branch leading up to the bell, and then as it gets into the bell, it still stays kind of narrow, it's acoustically efficient until it gets to about here, the bell throat, and then it starts getting very big, and there's a very deep, wide, in German they call this the Becher, the beaker, really, but that's the flare. And then, so it's a rather small bore through most of the horn, and then it gets very big at the bell before the flare. Geyer monohorn is a little different.
Hold the mic a little further
How about
away.
you hold the mic
Okay.
and I talk?
Yeah, because it's distorting according to on the live stream.
Okay.
Sorry.
Ain't nobody watching the live stream anyway. Geyer monohorns are actually a little bit bigger. If you compare the dimension or the diameter here in the first branch and then at the beginning of the bell tail, this one's a little bit bigger than the 8D. It stays a little bit bigger through the hand grip and through the bell curve, the bell tail. But then here in the throat, it's not quite as big. It's just a difference in design concept, but we feel like this model, our Veris 5, very acoustically efficient. It's got a yellow brass bell, a little bit more color in the sound. You can get the same colors on an 8D, but you have to work at it, and you have to change your oral cavity and blow differently. Yellow brass, in my opinion, is just a bit better as far as color options. You can play very soft and warm, or you can play fiery as well. And the yellow brass itself tends to throw off those harmonics when it gets excited. Was Josh going to play the examples?
Yeah.
So again, the AD and the Kruspe model, it balances the hardness of the nickel silver. Nickel silver is a bit harder metal than the yellow brass, so it can be very bright, but it tends to lack some of the middle harmonics that we associate with a great horn sound. But that's the trick with the AD, is that big bell throat kind of balances out those tendencies. It's a classic, wonderful design. But there's so many more options now with modern horn design. I think Josh was going to play maybe the 8D. Yeah. You want to play my mouthpiece? But so the classic thing about the 8D is it's a very rich, velvety sound, especially up close. It sounds amazing, but it tends to lack projection in a big hall.
Hold that while you're talking. Okay, should we turn it off? When you
Play it, baby.
Wait, turn it off. Can you tell we're doing this?
Say, mic check.
It's off.
It is? It's okay.
Lights off.
I forgot what I was playing. And then something.
Beautiful. Say something.
You have to hold it further away.
So I'm talking too close to the mic. And as I'm standing right here, actually on his bell side, is wonderful, rich sound. But I think what you'll hear is maybe crisper, cleaner articulation on the Geyer model horn.
I didn't play past that, did I? No. I forgot what I did.
You're good. I don't know if live stream people could tell the difference, but certainly on stage, and I think you guys could also hear that it's cleaner, crisper. Yeah, you didn't work any harder. The horn is doing the work, and that's we've found that with a lot of our German designs. Growing up playing 8Ds and Holtons, I thought you had to really work and push and force the horn to do what you wanted. But a good horn does more of the work for you, and so the trick is learn to back off and let the horn amplify the sound, but also provide the clarity for the articulations. Anything else, Mrs. Houghton? I kind of like this mic thing. It's fun. Test.
You're holding it too close to your. Okay, well, I just had a question for those of you that are in the audience and even online, what you thought, like what your perception was on the different sounds of both of those horns. Anybody have any thoughts? Because we don't want to put words in your mouth, but what did y'all think?
Well, I think the last horn you played seemed to have a clearer articulation to me and a nicer sound. But that might just be my personal preference. So,
Well, and the thing about the clearer sound and clearer articulation is that, we really would like to get these in the hands of a lot of students, because in a school program, horn players tend to play kind of mushy, young horn players. So anything that we can do to help them project and to provide them with a better horn for articulation, I think that's one of the reasons I like the Varus, is that it just helps, especially with the younger players. So, I played a Con 8D for most of my life, and I love Con 8D. I love the sound. That's what I grew up hearing, and so it's the comparison, though. Just keep in mind we're thinking for schools primarily, and younger players. So,
If I could hold the mic correctly. That's what we find. I taught in schools. I taught for 20 years, 70 students a week. I taught a bunch of kids in schools all over the area here. And directors are always wanting more clarity from the horns. Horns, can you tongue harder? Can you open your hand in the bell? I can't hear the articulation. So the acoustical efficiency of the Varus design of a Geyer model horn, it just works better for projecting through dense band textures or band or orchestra, and it makes the player's job easier. So again, there's the wonderful richness of the Con 8D, but you can also have a rich, warm sound on a brass horn that's a bit more acoustically efficient, and you gain so much on the other end with clarity of articulation and projection and clarity, to be totally redundant. Anything you want to add, Josh?
No. Actually, maybe.
What next, Ms. Houghton?
Well, I got a question. When you're slurring notes between the B flat and the F side, I noticed that on my Kruspe design, there's a difference in the pressure at the break point, and I have to push the F side a little harder on that. And I also used to play an old and ancient one that was was the other design, and it was smoother going between the two because it felt like the back pressure was about the same, and on the other it's not the same. Any comments?
So what he asked was playing his Kruspe model horn. He felt a difference between the B flat side and then changing to the F side with the change lever. Some of it is simply how the tubing's wrapped up. So both models of horn, the air comes through the mouth pipe, and the first valve it goes into is the change valve, the thumb valve. Same thing on the Geyer model horn, except it's located at the bottom of the stack instead of up here. But it could be just better efficiency. There's also the difference in the wrap. So there could be more resistance because there's more bends in a Kruspe model design, and the location of the bends. So and there's other factors like valve alignment and other mechanical issues with the horn. But in general, I think players around the country would agree Geyer models are easier to play and easier to project. As a horn designer and repair guy and technician, I'm always trying to find out how to make it play better, how to get more even resistance, more balanced. There are some designs, the Paxman designs. The Model 25 is what they call a dual bore. So the F side tubing is a bigger diameter to offset the extra wall resistance from that longer tube. It's crazy. We have 60 horns out there in the lobby on display. Every one of them is a 12-foot F horn and a 9-foot B flat horn. They're the same plumbing, same length of tubing, but every one of them plays different. And even I got to consult for a couple of years in the con factory. Between 8Ds coming off the assembly line, every one of those plays different because of different stress in the metal and 100 other factors. To me, it's just fascinating. I get to work on this stuff all the time. Now, I think Josh had some questions online that he was going to address.
I'm going to ask you to answer them.
He's going to ask me to answer.
Somebody online is asking, what is the best mouthpiece for each style of horn? For like a Kruspe or for a Geyer model?
So a friend of mine in Louisiana, also band director and horn player, wrote me a couple days ago. He's been playing the large, deep mouthpieces. In the 60s and 70s, 80s, Connie D's were played in the New York Philharmonic and the Philadelphia Orchestra with really big, deep mouthpieces and a big bore. And you had to work to play those things. It had a wonderful, rich sound, and it was something you could like wrap up in like a blanket and take a nap. But to get any kind of clarity, if you're playing a Mozart concerto or the Dvorak symphony, it's got some technical parts and some quick passages, you got to work really hard and change your oral cavity and do a lot of other stuff to get any clarity to project out into the audience. Personally, and it worked well for my son. Mark won a job in the Phoenix Symphony when he was right out of college. Played a Con 8D, but he is like a medium deep mouthpiece. At first, he used the Moosewood B12, and Tom Greer, our friend, mouthpiece maker, was in Phoenix at the time, and I remember sitting in his living room talking about these differences. So the old school thought was this really deep funnel-shaped mouthpiece that has this wonderful, rich sound. But again, you got to work really hard. More and more, and then to balance an 8D and make it play and fit in a section acoustically wise, get the sonic recipe that you're looking for, I recommend like a medium bore mouthpiece. Then Geyer model horns, I know Carl Geyer in Chicago when he was building horns in the 50s and 60s, he made pretty deep mouthpieces and pretty big, but they had a smaller bore. And that balanced out. The depth of the cup was balanced out by a bit smaller bore. And we've developed lots of different mouthpiece designs now. What those guys in the 50s and 60s did, there was a famous mouthpiece maker. I'm sure everybody recognizes Giardinelli, but our teacher in Los Angeles, Kaz Neal, used DeLosa mouthpieces. They were built in Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Orchestra. Giant deep caves. But what they didn't change was the other variable of the width of the mouthpiece. So both of those variables, the depth and the width of the rim, control the volume. So mouthpiece makers now are making mouthpieces in not just a 17 millimeter, which was kind of standard, but then 17 and a half, 18 millimeters. Some professional players use 18 and a half or even 19 millimeters now. Again, giving a bigger volume, but they also have maybe a shallower cup to balance out those different factors. So it's a fascinating topic you could study for years, which I have, and I still don't know everything about it. I don't know if that answered the question, but I talked a lot. Is there any other questions from online or from our friends here? Dr. Suchadolsky? She doesn't have a question. I guess she knows everything now. What else do we need to talk about, Ms. Houghton?
I really think that's it. Do you want to just,
We could play.
just close it?
Yeah.
Close it down with a little.
Do you want to say anything about this piece? I think Molly Wood wrote it.
Well, yeah, hold that up. Hang on. Bring it up. Hand me a trio book. Okay, so some of you may know that Janet and I have written a couple books. Recipe for Success, it's a method book for young players. And then we also, in collaboration with Molly Wood, Jerry's wife, some of you may know Jerry Wood, principal in Fort Worth. His wife, Molly, she was actually a student of mine. And so I've known her a long time. And she's a very gifted composer and arranger. And so we collaborated with her and have written this trio book, Tasteful Tunes, kind of a spin-off on the recipe type theme. But we thought we'd just close out and do just a tiny little trio here for the end. And then for those of you that are here live, we'll have some water and cookies, refreshments. Those of you online, you're out of luck. Too bad. But thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially the people that are here. It's great to see some friendly faces here. So thank you very much.
So your co-author, Janet Nye, N-Y-E, you all say Janet Nye and I. And it's like really confusing to people. So it's Janet Nye and myself, maybe. Okay. And then I want to point out also that Molly Wood was my student first before she studied with Karen. Very talented, amazing arranger, horn player, mom, and good friend of ours.
Okay, I'm going to need an instrument.
Oh, yeah, I have it. My bad. You got it?
So this is from the, what's the name of this thing?
Tasteful Tunes.
Tasteful Tunes, trios and duets for young players and old people like me.
Yeah.
This is really fun. I don't think we'll title it. We'll just let you guess.
Yeah. All right.
Shave and haircut, that's what it was called.
Hey, isn't the book only 2 bits?
No, it's a little more than 2 bits.
All right, chat. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much
Thank you.
for being here in person, and we're gonna, like Karen said, we'll bribe you with cookies and punch.
Give you another tour.
Horn stand, yeah, I could use another one.